Good morning, guys. Happy Sunday. We are here talking the Real Housewives of a couple different franchises, guys, because there's so much going on. I'm going to try to get it all into one video, but we're going to be talking a little bit about Carlos King on the Heather and McDonald podcast, where he speaks about the Real Housewives New Jersey early years and basically confirms Teresa's side of things, so we need to break that down. Also wanted to talk about Beverly Hills only because Renna has allegedly been caught with these Stan accounts on Twitter and Instagram, IP address allegedly coming back to her. Don't mess with Bravo viewers. We are not lazy. They will find anything you have buried. Viewers will find it. And then also want to talk about possibly Lisa Rinna doing Kyle's dirty work, and then also not Kim, Paris and Tom Cruise did a little skit that was on Instagram, and I wanted to tell you guys about it. So before we get started, make sure you hit that like button. Subscribe to my channel, turn those notifications on. They're so important. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and break this all down to you. Jennifer Aiden was also on a podcast. I think it was called The Real Housewives. It's on Apple Podcast. I did listen to it, but that's going to be for another video. I'll go over some of that with you. Starting with... Guys, I don't know what I should do. I guess let's just talk about New Jersey first and foremost. We're hearing it's going to be a very, very dark season, right? Carlos King came on the Heather McDonald podcast, and there is a clip of him on Instagram, and they're talking about New Jersey because Carlos King was not solely Real Housewives of Atlanta or Beverly Hills. He was literally on some of the best years, the best seasons. He was producers on those years of New Jersey, Atlanta, etc. So he knows a lot. He knows where the bones are buried, and he's made a lot of relationships through Bravo. Allegedly, he's trying to become the next Andy Cohen. Anyways, he went on Heather's podcast and had no problem spilling the tea and confirming that Teresa Giudice did not know that that Melissa and Joe and Rosie and Kathy and Richie were joining the Real Housewives of New Jersey until a week before filming. Now, guys, the story I've always explained to you guys and what I've always heard was that she didn't find out till the day before the christening, and she was on the phone with Kim D until like late into the night because she was so upset. And then, they went to the christening and then this huge fight broke out. But Carlos King is saying that it was a week before they filmed the christening scene that Teresa was made aware of them coming on the show. And he said that Teresa was upset because she said she didn't want to fight with her family on TV. She had already done 2 or 3 seasons of the New Jersey Housewives, so she knew what production was like. She knew what they were after. Carlos also confirms that she never tried to hide the producers, the cameramen. Carlos had said that he had met Joe and Melissa lots of times before filming, before they signed with with production and with Bravo, that he had met them at events that Teresa had, that she did not try to hide them from Bravo execs. This is pretty vindicating. Louis also commented on a reality site on Instagram and basically said that his wife had been vindicated after 10 years of, this narrative that Joe and Melissa allegedly were pushing, that Teresa was aware of everything that was going on and that everyone in New Jersey was trying out to get on the show and that they were no different than any other couple that tried out for the show. But we know that she was corresponding with Danielle. We have emails. Danielle's come out with receipts from that time period when her and Melissa were corresponding. We had also heard that Melissa's tape, her audition tape, that if anyone saw it, they would be like completely turned off by Melissa, allegedly, because she was really trying to sell herself as a younger, prettier, richer Teresa. And we've heard that from other sources as well. Now, do you guys remember Amber and Jim? I think that was the season that Teresa was getting ready to go to jail, maybe, or she had gone to jail. I'm gonna look it up for you guys. That's how much I want to know. Anyways, if you remember, it was like the two twins, and then there was Amber and her husband, and yes, it's before they went to jail, because Amber's husband was a prosecutor on one of Joe Giudice's case. Let's see what season this was. Anyways, it got brought up at BravoCon. Andy Cohen was asked a question. I think it was something around like, who was the least liked house husband he ever had to deal with, and he said Jim. And so of course Amber was pissed about it. She went on Instagram. So it looks like season 6 is when we saw Amber and Jim was prosecutor on one of the cases of Jim Giudice's. But Amber had came on as Melissa's friend. Do you guys remember that? Isn't that kind of messed up, though? Let's stop and think about that. That Melissa brings a friend onto the show whose husband is in the judicial system. He's a prosecutor, a federal prosecutor. That's Melissa's friend, a federal prosecutor. Like, did we uncover something here, guys? Like, let's think about that. He's a federal prosecutor, and that was Melissa's friend. She was her bridesmaid, okay? They're not friends now. They weren't friends by the time the season was over, but they started out as a reasonably good friends, good enough that Amber was in Melissa's wedding. Is it possible that Melissa said something to Amber prior to the Giudices getting in trouble? Like, is it possible that Melissa was giving information to Amber and Amber was giving information to her husband, who is a federal prosecutor, and he was therefore giving information to detectives? Is that possible? I don't know, but it definitely sounds kind of plausible. I mean, isn't it kind of like not really right of you if you know that your sister-in-law is dealing with a federal indictment, and you by chance, like your good friend that was bridesmaid in your wedding, her husband is a federal prosecutor, and so you start hanging out and get her on the show. You know, I'm sure Melissa had input on this girl getting on the show, especially because it was helping Melissa's storyline as well. That's kind of wild, guys. I think that really says something. I don't think that Caroline would turn the Giudices in. And I'm going to tell you why. Caroline and her husband are old school. They are old school Italian, allegedly old school mob. We know that Al's dad was murdered and cut up and put in the trunk of his Cadillac, okay? They live by old school rules. And so typically in traditional mob-like settings, they don't tell on each other, okay? What's the saying? Like, snitches get stitches and end up in ditches or something like that. I don't believe that Melissa has that sort of integrity in her. And someone messaged me and said that they had found some information on Joe Gorga, and that they didn't want to, of course, like come out with it until they had 100% proof. And this was one that I really hadn't heard, but basically saying that they thought that Joe and Melissa had actually been the ones to turn Teresa in. And I never consider that. I consider that Joe Gorga had bad business dealings, had probably owed people money, pissed people off. You know, allegedly he had that lawyer friend. He was in a couple of episodes. That's who they claim set them up. It's possible. They would have gotten a discovery pack when they were being indicted that would tell their lawyers exactly who and what, if people were recorded talking to them about it, or things like that. But to get them on, like, that's once they were already investigating. But who put them on to start investigating Joe and Teresa in the first place, right? because the evidence that they had like afterwards established. But at the same time, is it possible that somebody was given a tip and that put detectives onto the case, and then they had people that were in that area and started working with them and were able to find out, yeah, there's something fishy going on here. And of course, like, I'm sure that Amber would have referred back to the footage from like season 1 and 2 when Teresa has all that cash and she goes into the store and buys that furniture with cash. All he would have to do would be go into work and mention, that there's this couple, him and his wife are getting interviewed for the Real Housewives of New Jersey, and they have a contact, and there's this couple that, don't seem to be living right. Like, come look at this. And a detective just take down their names and start an investigation and then go from there. And that is something that, I don't know, that could happen. I think that could happen. Do you guys think that could happen? And do you think that Melissa and Joe would turn Teresa into the feds? I don't necessarily think that Joe would, but do I think that Melissa would have conversations with Amber, giving Amber information that came from Joe that maybe was confided in him and given to Melissa, and then Melissa took it to her friend but never told Joe? I think Melissa makes a lot of moves behind Joe's back. I think that her mom, her sisters, they're beautiful women, and I think they have a way of operating. I mean, remember when Teresa said like Melissa controls her husband, and everyone was like, oh my gosh, like, la 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 la, you can't control your husband. And Jackie told Teresa, do you think if you could control your husband, he'd be in prison right now? Regardless, I do think that Melissa has a very, very, very big impact on the way Joe Gorga makes moves as well. And I do think Melissa makes moves behind the scenes that we don't know about, that we would probably be surprised about. But yeah, this is what is starting to like bubble up in the blogger community, along with, of course, other allegations and rumors about the Gorgas, and then Jennifer Aiden, since we've made this all about New Jersey anyways. She was on a podcast, and she was talking about everything that happened, like the incident with Joe and Melissa at the hotel. And like, she just really said that she wishes they could get along, and that she doesn't want to fight with Teresa's brother. She said she went into fight or flight mode when it happened because of what Joe was saying to her. It was like so offensive. And also, she said that when she walked through the lobby, that Melissa kind of waited till she got all the way over to the elevators before she said, bye, loser. And Jennifer said she responded with, don't be not, or what is it? Don't give none, you won't get none. She pulled one of Candy's lines. Something, you guys know what I mean. Won't be, if you don't start any, there won't be any. That's what I think it was she said to her. And then, of course, the whole thing broke out, and Joe Gorga allegedly was yelling, like, derogatory things. But here's the juicier part, okay? Jennifer claims that Louis saw Joe at BravoCon and went up and hugged him because Louis was with his son Louis, and he really wanted to set a good example. And he ran into, of course they were in BravoCon. I'm sure they had to have seen each other at least here or there. And when Louis did, he actually hugged him. And Jennifer said that Joe Gorga looked completely shocked. Don't think they really spoke after that, but Joe knows that Louis did that because he wanted to show his son like how to be a good man. Now, also, Jennifer did speak about the panels, and she claimed that production told them that basically they didn't want a reunion breaking out on the panels, which I think is completely reasonable, and I believe this explanation more than anything I've heard. Producers didn't want a reunion breaking out on the stage, and they want to keep the anticipation going for the season, so they don't want to see have all of the New Jersey cast members on the same panels and then basically fighting about things that had happened in the season that we hadn't even seen yet. So that's why they had to keep those panels separate, which I think is very reasonable. Jennifer just, I thought she gave a pretty good interview. You know, she did basically realize that Andy Cohen said it was disgusting, the drink throwing. And so she did apologize and say that, you know, she should not have done that and that she was just in fight or flight mode. And she was frustrated because she said that the night before they had been at a party and that Joe had ran into Bill, and Bill was so kind and so nice to Joe. And then for Joe to turn around and do that to her in the lobby, she was frustrated. Now Melissa had came out with a podcast, guys. I listened to it. It was really crazy because I told you guys how there was a Justin guy. He's like the hair color guy of All the Stars. He had went on Teddy and Tamara's podcast, Two T's in a Pod, and said that he had ran into Melissa Gorga and that she was so rude. She was like Jennifer Lopez, like too good to talk to him. They were actually in the elevator. And afterwards, he even messaged Teddy Mellencamp, like, did we talk bad about her? Like, have we done something to Melissa because she was just so rude and dismissive of me? You know, I'm like, cannot even believe it. So once that came out, guess what Melissa did? Melissa had Justin on her podcast. But what did it do? It gave her a platform and an opportunity to bring up the entire situation about Jennifer. And she basically says, you know, that Jennifer had been bashing them all day, all afternoon on all these panels, and that, you know, she had not said Jennifer's name one single time. Jennifer also says that she didn't talk about Melissa at all, except for that one specific question where she was asked and she said that they were holding on for dear life. Melissa just ended up deleting the podcast. She was getting so much hate for it. It got deleted. She took it down. The Justin guy, of course, you know, now that Melissa's reached out to him and put him on his podcast, put him on her podcast, he was, you know, saying how he could understand why she wouldn't speak to him because he was drunk and he was like a frat boy and was like, hey, Melissa, I love you. And she didn't know who he was. And now that they've, you know, talked about the situation, there was just a misunderstanding and Melissa doesn't even know if she heard him and just all of this nonsense. And then she goes into the whole situation with Jennifer and what happened and how, you know, Jennifer was not attacked and she shouldn't use words like that. And just on and on and on. And like I said, guys, she got so much hate for it. She had to take it down. What I realized about all of these people in their podcast is like they don't have regular seasons and schedules. They just have an ongoing podcast that gives them a platform to speak about all things Bravo and not have to have it monitored by Bravo. And then they just keep up with episodes in between to keep the audience engaged. And then they don't make another one until something, you know, happens. And this is very common for Melissa Gorga. If you guys go back and look on her podcast, Joe Gorga was on her show, then like a week later it was somebody else, and all that had transpired about Teresa's wedding. Then Joe was on her show again, and then we didn't see one for a while. So that's just been what I've noticed. But yeah, she had to take it down. Yeah, because she was getting that much hate on it. What else is there anything else I wanted to tell you guys about them? I don't think so. I'm going to do a video about Beverly Hills and, get that up for you guys. I don't know how long this was going to take to upload, but, yeah. So, all right, guys. Well, I hope you have a great Sunday. Don't forget to like this video. Make sure that you comment and turn those notifications on. I am going to start working on some new things and a live schedule so that a couple of times a week we have a schedule. I'll go live. We'll have a moderator, and it won't be so sporadic. All right, guys. So stay tuned and put the notifications on so that you can be up to date with what's going on. Have a great day.